All right. Welcome, everyone. Today, what we're going to be talking about is how to boost your immune system. And I'm super excited about this topic because, this is where energy production begins. Like, this is the hub. This is basically where the magic happens. And so I believe that if you understand if you understand the microbiome, if you understand your immune system, if you understand how it works, then you're going to understand how your body produces energy, right? And so I'm super excited to share with you, today everything that I know, when it comes to your body producing, energy, and understand that when I say, when I say and talk about boosting your immune system, what I'm really talking about is about strengthening your microbiome. I'm talking about strengthening what lives in your gut. So the first lesson, that I learned, this is really what changed everything for me. This is where my epiphany came from. This is where I started to learn and understand what was going on with me, was understanding that 80% of your immune system is your gut. Okay, so I want to illustrate a little bit for you how this looks, and what what is it that you have to like really pay attention to, what is it that you have to look into in order to fully understand what the immune system is. And so I'm going to start out with I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to walk you through how I see the microbiome. So the easiest example that I can give you is this analogy, okay, that your gut, your gut is essentially the same thing as if you were to have a tree. There's a root system, right? So essentially your gut is just like the root system of a tree, and 80% of your immune system is your gut health. It's the root of a tree. That's 80% of your immune system. So, but what exactly is it when you say immune system? Well, we're talking about what lives in your gut, right? And we call that gut flora. So what I want you to understand is what does all of this mean? Okay, gut flora, immune system. Understand that these are basically living creatures. Okay, they're little critters. Some are microscopic, some are macroscopic, meaning some you can see visually, some you can't. You need a microscope to see them. But you have to understand that your immune system, your gut flora, is composed of both good and there's bad. Okay, so you have good bacteria, you have good yeast, right? There's bacteria, yeast, there's mold, right? Fungus, parasites, virus, right? And so, and I believe that there may be some good mold and potentially even, parasites. And this is something that, I'm still kind of like researching and trying to figure out for myself, because one thing that I understand is that you cannot completely get rid of the bad stuff. Okay. There is a purpose, there is a need for them. They are part of the ecosystem. Parasites, for example, one of the things that they do is they help your body clean up dead cells, right? So without them, your body will be left with waste that you can't, that you can't get rid of. And so I believe that there are times where, some of these, and I mean, oftentimes the reason why these are in the body is due to toxic environments. It's due to stuff that you don't want in the body. And this is important to understand because when you are doing a detox, what you are doing is, on one hand, you're trying to get rid of the bad bacteria, okay, the bad stuff. On the other hand, when you're detoxing, you're breaking down the body, you're also getting rid of stuff. And so oftentimes, in some cases, you could potentially even activate some of the bad stuff. And so these are things that you have to understand, not to fear, but to be aware so that you know how to overcome these challenges. And so my whole purpose for today is to focus more on the good and help you understand the importance of really strengthening your immune system by growing and promoting the health of all of your good bacteria, primarily yeast and bacteria, right? These are your probiotics. I'll write it down. Probiotics, okay? So right off the bat, what I want to talk about is, what affects your gut, okay? What affects your immune system? I believe that the more that you understand how all of this, is put together, the more you're going to understand what my diet is, why I do the changes, why I did the changes that I did to my diet, and why I follow like all of these, practices that I'm sharing with you. This is basically what has helped me, improve my health, because at the end of the day, it's the probiotics in your body that produce vitamins for you. They produce hormones for you. They clean your body. They keep you healthy. That's, 80% of your immune system is this. It's basically having a good balance of, a good amount of good bacteria. And like I said, you're not going to be able to get rid of all the bad, but your gut health is going to be healthy if the bad bacteria is minimized and or also inactive. Okay. And that's another key component. We all have a variety of these bad bugs already in our body. An example would be the strep bacteria, right? So when you get strep throat, you don't just acquire this bacteria from the environment per se. What usually happens is that there is a condition that happens that awakens the strep bacteria that's already in your body, right? And so what changes and what are the conditions, I guess, that are needed for some of these bacteria to wake up is basically what I teach, which is water, minerals, pH, temperature. Okay, this, depending on where these are at, this is what determines what lives, what thrives, what grows in your body. Okay, this is basically what I play with. So different ways that you can boost your immune system. Number one is drinking more water, right? I gave the example of a tree. In order for a tree to grow, this tree started out as a seed. That seed is planted into soil. That soil, if it's fertile soil, what it means is that it has minerals in the soil. It means that the soil has the proper pH, and it also means that the temperature is ideal for it to sprout and grow. But if you don't add water, then this tree isn't going to grow. And then the other component that we need for growth is basically sunlight, which is where vitamin D comes into play, right? Without sunlight, the tree doesn't grow. Without sunlight, we don't grow. We're not healthy, right? So these are things that I started to realize and understand, that this is what helps our immune system be strong. So different ways that you can boost your immune system. Water, it's not just about drinking the right amount of water. You have to look at the quality of water. Okay, if your water has different contaminants, which, if you live in the city, pretty much all city water is treated. And so you have to look at, does it have chlorine, chloramines? Those are like basically the two main. Does it have fluoride or other halogens, heavy metals? And you can look at this by just do a Google search and Google like water quality report. and then the name of your city. And all cities basically make this available to you. And you can begin to see, is the quality of your water, is that good? Because one thing that I learned in the brewing process was that I can't brew beer with city water because it's treated with chlorine and chloramines, and that affects yeast, right? And yeast is a probiotic. Okay, so one thing that I want you to start to understand is to make that distinction that there's both good yeast and bad yeast. There's good bacteria, there's bad bacteria. Okay, so when we talk about probiotics, we're talking about the good stuff. Probiotics, pro means it's for, biotics means life, right? So for life, the opposite of probiotics will be antibiotics. That's against life, right? That's basically antibiotics kill your gut flora. That's what wrecks. It's kind of like herbicides and pesticides for a tree. It just wipes out everything. That's why a lot of people that, get on antibiotics, if they don't do probiotics, their gut is damaged, from that. And so with water, there are certain things that are going to damage your gut, right? So these are things that you have to pay attention to. So these are ways that I started to optimize my microbiome. I started to change the quality of my water, right? I use distilled water as a base, right? That's the cleanest water that you can get. And then from there, I add minerals, right? So I want to make sure that, the body is getting minerals. Minerals is basically what allows the tree and our bodies to be conductive. Okay. And I give this as an example of, there's a battery, right? Every cell of your body is just like a battery, right? You have, positive, negative, but a battery, all that it does is that it stores energy. Every cell of your body, what it does, it stores energy. You all have energy. If you're watching this, you have energy, okay? Even if you feel right now tired all the time and all of that, trust me, that's where I was, but trust me, you have energy. Otherwise, you wouldn't be awake, you wouldn't be watching this. But storing energy is only part of the equation. Okay, you have to be able to use that energy, right? And so in order to use it, what do you do with a battery? You connect some sort of conductor, right? So in batteries, we use copper wires, right? Copper is a mineral, and that's basically what allows you to conduct electricity, right? So all the electronic circuits in your phone, the wiring in your house, that's what that is. So minerals, that's what they are. They're conductive minerals. Magnesium, copper, zinc, that's what they are. And so when you have those minerals in your body, what they're allowing you to do is they're allowing you to use the energy that's stored in that battery. Okay, without minerals, yeast and bacteria cannot grow. Okay, so one way to boost your immune system is to make sure that you have minerals in your body, right? Ideally, minerals will come from food, but this is what has happened is that our food supply is so messed up, our soils are so depleted for minerals that we have to, source it out, which most people don't, because most people shop at their convenience store, and convenience stores usually have conventional foods, and conventional foods are usually devoid of minerals. This is why I go to local farmers markets, and this is why I'm teaching this information, because I believe that as more people learn and understand this, then you're going to start to support your local farmers that actually follow regenerative agriculture practices, which actually add minerals to their soils. They actually, make sure that your food has minerals. Like, they understand this stuff, right? And so you can start to see why there's so many people that have all these gut issues, because they're just not eating the right food, right? They're not eating the right food. And if they're not eating the right food, they're not feeding their yeast and bacteria. And if they're not feeding their probiotics, then your body's not going to digest food properly. And if your body doesn't digest food properly, certain cells of your body, if they have, they get damaged from oxidative stress, from all the toxins that are put out by the bad bacteria. Now you have dead cells, and that basically is what gives more growth to these guys, to the bad stuff, right? So one way to strengthen your immune system is basically make sure that you have minerals, not just, by supplementing like magnesium and stuff that we use, but also paying attention to the foods that you are eating, right? So this is, there's going to be a lot here, but I want you to get the full picture of what is really going on. Boosting your immune system, you're boosting the yeast and bacteria, and this is what plays a role. pH. pH is possibly one of the more technical and challenging topics to talk about. So I'm going to keep it very simple. In the brewing process, what we would use to regulate pH is calcium. And calcium has uses in the body. Some are positive, some are negative, but primarily calcium is something that we use as a pH regulator. And what you need to understand about pH is there's a couple things that affect pH. One is your ability to absorb calcium and use calcium. Okay, your ability to do that comes from vitamin D. All right, and so pH, anytime that your pH drops, what pH is essentially measuring voltage. Okay, it's measuring electricity. So if your pH becomes acidic, that means that if you were to have a 9-volt battery, right, that voltage basically drops. So your potential basically drops. Okay, that's not good. That's what allows certain bacteria to wake up, right? Like I gave the example of, strep throat. If your body becomes acidic, then there are some funguses, parasites that basically begin to wake up and or go from aerobic fermentation to anaerobic. Okay, and that's bad. Okay, that's not good. That's not supposed to happen in the body. And so things that affect pH is lack of vitamin D, right? So right now a lot of people are quarantined. If you're not going out and getting sun, your vitamin D levels are dropping unless you are supplementing and getting vitamin D from food. And if you have autoimmune conditions, the only food that I know of that will actually help you boost your vitamin D is fermented cod liver oil. All the other supplements, okay, and I get this all the time. So many people taking, vitamin D supplements that measure vitamin D in IUs, 3,000 IUs, 5,000 IUs, whatever it is. Understand that those supplements are food and they need to be digested. In autoimmune conditions, what it means is that you're lacking probiotics, or you have bad bacteria, or you have a toxic environment, right? A low pH, acidic pH, something that if you were to take those vitamin D supplements, they're not going to be digested properly and they're not going to be uptaken by the body. Fermented cod liver oil, on the other hand, that's already digested, so there's nothing to digest. That really just goes into the body and the body just takes it up. Okay, that's the biggest difference there. And one way to really boost your immune system, especially if you have autoimmune conditions, is really just vitamin D. Okay, that's the biggest one. But then again, vitamin D alone is not going to help you. Okay, because vitamin D, in order for your body to uptake it properly, you need the right environment. Okay, you need to eat the right foods. Vitamin D is a fat soluble vitamin, which means you need to understand the difference between good, healthy fats so that the vitamin D that you're taking can actually be used up by the body. And you have to understand what are bad oils. Okay, bad oils are oils that are, they go rancid, they oxidate, and they're not good carriers for vitamin D, right? And a lot of these bad oils are things like vegetable oils, polyunsaturated fats, and you see this all over the place. Again, as you start to learn more about this, okay, this is how bad our food supply is. You're going to start going to convenience stores, you're going to start looking around, and you're going to notice that about 80 to 90%, if not the entire grocery store, depending on how low quality it is, it's not good food. Okay, it's bad food, and that's what people are eating. And then you wonder why over 2/3 of the U.S. is overweight, and why we have so many problems with obesity and autoimmune conditions and all of these things, is because people don't understand food. People don't understand these things that I'm talking about here. And as you start to understand it, the biggest problem that you start to face is that you're kind of like, wait a second, none of this food is good. What am I supposed to eat? Right? That's kind of where I found myself at one point where I'm like, I don't even know what to eat now because everything just seems to be bad. And it's not that there's nothing to eat. It's just that you start to become aware that, hey, real food, you're going to have to like source it out. And again, you're not going to do this, overnight. Okay. You're going to make little changes at a time. For a lot of people, food may not be something that you play with until after, right? I always tell people with easy stuff like drinking more water. Everyone here can start drinking more water. And, this is one of the reasons why I talk about mindset being important. There are some people that they look at what I do and they start to get overwhelmed. It's like, well, I can't do the water, the minerals, the vitamin D, and the Ayurvedic herbs and all these other things. And because they see all of that, they don't even start with the number one step, which is just drink more water. Okay, so part of my goal in this 14-day challenge is to help people get started. Okay, even if all you do is drink more water, guess what? You're one step closer to getting more energy. You're one step closer to boosting and improving your immune system. And that's how my programs are set up. It's just one step at a time. Okay, if you try to implement everything that I do, there's no way. Okay, because I've been doing this for years. And what you are seeing is the equivalent of going and see someone golf, someone who's been golfing for 20 years and they hit a hole in one, and then you try to go learn. Well, when you first get started, you're not going to hit a hole in one. I mean, you're lucky if you even hit the golf ball to begin with. You're going to learn the basics. You're going to learn, how to hold the club. And a lot of these things are counterintuitive, right? I mean, it's funny. I mean, even in golf, you don't grip the golf club, super tight. You actually want to hold it like an eggshell, like it's fragile. Well, when you start learning about health, you're going to see that there's a lot of similarities. There's a lot of things that are going to be counterintuitive. For those of you who've been following me for a while, you pretty much know that a lot of things that I do are practically the exact opposite of what I was told I needed to do. Okay. And that's one of the reasons why I share with people, like, hey, I'm not a doctor. I learned about this from the brewing process, but you don't hear doctors say that, hey, you got to add cholesterol to your diet, right? Usually what, doctors say is the opposite. Fasting. I do fasting. Usually doctors tell you that's not good. Cruciferous vegetables, right? That's another topic, right? I juice cruciferous vegetables. Now you have to understand like when is it appropriate, how do you do it? And that's part of like, why I want you to understand how everything is put together so that you can understand like at what point do you integrate certain things. Another topic is cutting out sugar, grains, dairy products, right? So I talk about cutting that out, but when it comes to hormone production, what I talk about is if you want your body to produce hormones, well, you actually want to, introduce dairy products into your diet, right? Because it has cholesterol and all your steroid type of hormones come from cholesterol, but you can't do that in the beginning, especially if you have a damaged gut, if you have, a damaged microbiome, right? So you have to start from the very, very beginning. And the basics are these, you gotta get your water intake right. Okay, that's going to help you get your minerals right, get the pH of your body, corrected. And you're going to do that through vitamin D. And then temperature is, the last one. When I was going through a lot of my issues, my hands will get cold, my feet will get cold, my body temperature overall was basically, slightly off, a couple degrees lower, one, just over a degree. But that 1 degree difference, again, even, just from brewing beer, I know that 1 degree difference can be the difference between your body being able to digest food and not being able to digest food. Okay. So how do you boost your immune system? Well, you want to make sure that your body temperature is regulated. Okay. And how do you do that? Well, this one's a little bit tougher because all these other factors have to be in play, but vitamin D is important, hormone production is important, right? So this is just the big picture of what you want to look at when it comes to boosting your immune system. Now, what I want to talk about next is I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into some of these topics. But before I do that, let me check in with you guys and see how you guys are doing here on Facebook. Who's all live? I see April, welcome. And I see Lisa. I don't know if you guys have been here from the beginning, but if you guys feel like, you know, this explanation is making sense so far, let me know. You know, I've talked about these topics, you know, a few times, and what I want to do is I want to make sure that you guys are understanding, you know, everything that I'm talking about and how everything's, you know, coming together. You know, especially as you guys start to learn how to use the products that, you know, that I use, you know, my diet and everything. You know, I want to make sure you guys see how everything integrates and how everything not only just comes together, but like how it just all makes sense. That this is, you know, this is what has helped me, and it's not just because I came up with it randomly. It's just that it's what made sense. So, Christina, so you're wondering about the pH. You missed the first 5 minutes. So what about pH? Were you wondering? I don't know if you heard any of that part, if you want me to go over, if there was something that maybe was not clear. You know, while you type in your question, I'll give you I'll give you a couple different ways that you know, pH you know, is affected in the body. But I mean, number one, pH, like I said, it's a complex topic, and we have to like break it down in different ways, because the body, you know, you have to look at it holistically. You have to look at the entire body, right? So when people say like your body pH is low, most people don't have, you know, a clear understanding of what that means. And I have to make a distinction that, you know, there's a difference between, for example, you know, your mouth has a different pH than your stomach. Okay, your stomach has a different pH than your gut. Your gut has a different pH than your blood. Your blood has a different pH than the cells of your body. Your skin has a different pH. I mean, even the pH of your facial skin is different than the rest of your body. So understanding pH, like I said, this is why it's a little bit complicated. But when I usually talk about pH, you know, the body being acidic, what I'm referring to is about the water, the pH of the water inside of the cells of your body. Okay, because this is where your body produces energy. This is basically the you know, the mitochondria of your body. This is what produces energy. Mitochondria are essentially part of your microbiome. They're part of your immune system. They're part of what helps your body, you know, strengthen your immune system. Like the more energy your body produces, that energy feeds your gut flora. Your gut flora provides the nutrients for the mitochondria to function, right? So they kind of work hand in hand. They're all part of this whole ecosystem. And so if the cells of your body start to become acidic, your energy production basically lowers. And if your energy production lowers, then the health of your gut flora suffers. Okay, so this is why, you know, when people start to have gut related issues, right, they're eating food, and, you know, if you have gas, bloating, constipation, that means your body's not digesting that food properly. And if you're not digesting that food properly, your body's not getting nutrients. And those nutrients, not only are they not feeding your gut flora, which is your immune system, but your mitochondria is not getting the nutrients that it needs so that it can actually produce energy. And you go into this vicious cycle where now you're not producing energy. So now your gut flora is weaker. So now you're eating foods, and you have a harder and harder time digesting foods. And so, you know, with no nutrients, you have no energy, your body cannot produce hormones, cannot produce melatonin, so you have a hard time falling asleep. So even if you're tired, right, you try to go to sleep, you can't fall asleep because you don't have the hormones that help you fall asleep. And so you have to somehow reverse that. And that's basically what, you know, what I'm trying to, like, you know, teach here. The way that I did it was that I started to understand that, hey, I need to create an environment in my body that basically helps not just your gut flora, your microbiome, but also the mitochondria, because they both work hand in hand. So pH is one of those components that if the pH of the cells in your body becomes acidic, one way that that affects it is that the lower the pH, the less oxygen is able to dissolve into it. And energy production is nothing more than that exchange of oxygen, hydrogen, right? That's why water is what the body uses to produce energy, right? H2O, hydrogen, oxygen, right? So pH affects how much carbon dioxide dissolves into the cells of your body. And this is where you start to understand, different things. Like if your body's dehydrated, right, then you don't have that raw material to produce energy, right? So that's why when people like don't drink water, it makes sense why their body's not producing energy. Like that's the very first thing. That's the raw material the body uses to produce energy. It's one of them. So, these are, simple things that will help you understand. Last one, as far as pH goes, is that whenever that pH drops, that's what allows certain bacteria to wake up. Okay, and this is what I started to learn from, I don't know if you guys saw the video with Dr. Jerry Tennant that I shared, when was this, a couple of weeks ago maybe? But he was talking about that, where, if the pH of your body drops, then, the first thing that happens is you get tired. Second thing is bad bacteria wake up, and then you get into the point where you go into anaerobic respiration for some of these critters. And that's where basically cancer cells live, is in a very acidic environment, right? And so that's basically how I see, all of this. And this is how I understand it. It's just, to me, like every living creature in your body, whether it thrives or it's dormant, depends on the amount of water that your body has, the minerals, the pH, or the temperature of your body, right? So if you're dehydrated, if you're demineralized, if your body's acidic, if your body temperature is low, those combined, that's what gives growth to bad stuff. Okay, that's really what you have to understand. And I don't want anyone to ever focus on, oh, well, I'm just going to hydrate, or just look at pH. Do all of it. Okay, it's a whole system. Don't just focus on, oh, I'm going to alkalize my body. Well, you can alkalize your body all you want, but if you don't hydrate, if you don't mineralize, and if you don't raise the temperature of your body, you're still not going to do good. And when you start to incorporate all of the things that I share, it's holistic. It's about creating all of the ideal conditions for your body to thrive. So, so I hope that made sense there. Lisa, will the cod liver oil and butter oil upset my stomach? Dairy does that to me. So this is where, as far as what affects people and what doesn't, the only way to know really is to try it. Personally, I don't think it is. And let me see if I can explain this one so I can help you. Maybe overcome that fear, and also to understand like what fermentation means. So let me share my screen again. So the word fermented, okay, what this means. If you take milk, right, so we're talking about butter, right? So it's a dairy product. So, milk, essentially, it's a mixture of water and fat. Okay, and so the fat essentially becomes butter. All right, so but what I want you to focus on is fat. All right, so what happens, when people have allergic reactions is, an allergy, to me, what it is basically an undigested protein in the body. Okay, so if your body's not able to digest protein, that's what gives you that, that allergic reaction. The way that it works is that your body's essentially designed, if you eat protein, think of that protein as a chain of amino acids. So digestion is nothing more than cleaving, cutting down, breaking down that protein into a smaller chain. Right? So when you're digesting, this is what's happening is you're taking a protein, right? So say, you drink milk, milk has casein, that's a protein in milk, or, whey, right? Whey protein. Digestion is basically breaking that down into smaller and smaller components until you get to that single amino acid. Okay, so you go from a protein to amino acid. Okay, now the question is, how does your body break down protein and turn it into amino acids? The answer is probiotics. But in order for the probiotics to break down protein and turn to amino acids, this is where the ideal conditions need to be in place, right? You need to have the right amount of water, minerals, pH, temperature, and understand that, when it comes to digesting food, protein needs a more acidic pH compared to starches, sugar, right? And that's why your proteins are primarily digested in your stomach. So what will cause someone to have allergic reactions or an upset stomach when eating protein could be, low stomach acid, right? If you have low stomach acid, if your stomach's not acidic enough, then you're not going to break it down and digest it. In your gut, it could be that you don't have the probiotics that break down the protein into an amino acid. And so that's basically what will happen there is that, if you eat a protein, whether it's milk or butter or chicken or beef or whatever, if you're not able to fully digest it and you end up with this instead of a single amino acid, well, the way that your body works is that, every tissue, like every organ, like your thyroid, it's protein, but it's protein that your body makes. And the way that it makes it is that it reverses the process where it takes all of your amino acids that you get from food and it builds its own protein. And in that process of building, what it does is that it puts essentially a signature, right? So this is basically what your DNA, your RNA, that's what that is. It's basically your body tagging the proteins that it makes and saying, okay, you are part of the body. So the body's constantly scanning itself for proteins. And if it finds a protein that it didn't make, it says, okay, you're a foreign invader, let's attack. And the way that it attacks is that it tries to break it down. So it sends antibodies, right? So if this sounds familiar, if you have proteins that mimic the proteins in your thyroid, you can get antibodies to go in and attack. And that's what will cause, an allergic reaction. An upset stomach is the same thing. It's basically your body not digesting protein properly. Now, the word fermented, what that means is that digestion has happened. Fermentation, whether it is from fat, protein, or starch, it's basically broken down to its smallest component. And then fermentation is what happens after it's broken down to its smallest component. So in the case of fat, that fat is now turned into vitamins, and other nutrients, right? Like hormones, whatever. In the case of brewing beer, it was basically taking the same concept, starch, breaking it down into sugars like dextrins, fructose, and disaccharides, basically, until you get to the single molecule, that glucose. And then fermentation is taking that glucose and that turns into beer, right? Alcohol and all that kind of stuff. Well, in the case of fermented cod liver oil, what you are eating is essentially fat and protein that has already been digested. Not only that, what did that was some sort of probiotic. So you're actually getting the probiotic with that. So if you were to ask me, like, is this going to upset your stomach? More than likely, I don't think so, because what you are taking is something that's already been digested, and you're essentially just getting vitamin D. Okay, when you take fermented cod liver oil, what you're getting is vitamin D. If you were to just take cod liver oil, okay, not fermented cod liver oil, but just regular cod liver oil, then what you're eating is you're eating the actual fat from it, right? Butter, same thing. If you eat butter, you're eating the actual fat undigested. Okay, so you may have an allergic reaction to that because it's undigested. When it's fermented, fermented cod liver oil and or fermented butter, fat, then what you are eating, what you're taking in, you're not taking in the actual fat because it's already been digested, it's already been broken down, and it's been fermented, which means that the nutrients have already been extracted, right? And this is why, like, when people take supplements for vitamin D and they do like the whole 3,000 IUs, 5,000 IUs, what's happening is they're essentially taking this and that's going into their guts, but they don't have the probiotics in there, so they're not uptaking the nutrients, so their vitamin D levels don't go up, and they're just wasting money with it. Whereas with fermented cod liver oil and butter oil, it's already been digested, so you don't need the probiotics in your gut because it's already been converted to vitamin D. And this is why this was the way that I had low vitamin D. At my vitamin D was at 22 nanograms per deciliter, and the only way that I know of to be able to raise that, other than sunlight, which doesn't really work well when you're toxic, is fermented cod liver oil, right? And what happens is that as you boost your vitamin D, what that does is that improves your gut flora. And as you improve your gut flora, you know what improves? Digestion. So this is what makes sense to me. This is why, like, all the supplements that I ever share and all the foods don't work and don't make sense if you're not mineralized and you don't have vitamin D, because your body's not going to digest it, break it down, and it's not going to uptake it. And that's why I start everyone with understanding water, minerals, and vitamin D. If you want to get more energy, the nutrients that your body needs are basically things like coenzyme Q10, iron, selenium, manganese. But supplementing those nutrients, if you don't have vitamin D, is not going to do you any good because the body's not going to uptake it, right? And this is basically what it looks like when you start to understand your gut flora. When this is your immune system, okay? And the one thing that I hope people get out of like the things that I share is that water, minerals, and vitamin D are like the most important things that you can really get into and understand. And most important, like for me, like when I got started, I didn't know like a lot of this, but if I were to like go back, what I would go the hardest on more than anything is mineralizing and vitamin D. And I tell people all the time, like I would take, I've taken up to like 20 capsules of, the fermented cod liver oil. It's food. Like that just strengthens you. Like you should not be afraid of it. And, if you're afraid of it upsetting your stomach, um, what I would say is two things. Number one, before you start with cod liver oil, first of all, make sure that you have water and minerals, okay? Because vitamin D needs magnesium in order for your body to uptake it, okay? And this is why, like this is the order that I want people to do these things in, because if you do it out of order, it's just not going to work. Hydrate, mineralize with magnesium, and then vitamin D. And if you're afraid of vitamin D, if the fermented cod liver oil, if the butter is going to upset your stomach, maybe you've had dairy issues in the past. What I would say is, start with one capsule. Okay, if you really are afraid, like I said, I don't think it is going to, but I don't know. I mean, it's you only know your body, and only you're going to know. My guess more than anything is going to be like it's not only is it a no, but I think that's if dairy upsets you, then you need it more. Okay, like that's the other thing. Because dairy is one of the products that I use for hormone production, Dairy is a good source of vitamin D as well, but the only way that you can get vitamin D out of it is if you're able to digest it. And the only way you're going to be able to digest it is if your vitamin D levels are high. Okay, so that's kind of like that catch 22 of like, if you're having poor digestion, you're going to have all of these, issues like upset stomach with dairy and stuff like that. So hopefully I answered your question there on that one. Sinian from Ireland. Cool, welcome. Christina, your temperature is low. Temperature will be something that you're going to notice once we get into our hormone production. It's primarily regulated by your ability to produce testosterone and estrogen. And and as you understand like body temperature, you also start to understand fertility, which is why I think someone was posting earlier about how how your thyroid affects your fertility, your sex life essentially. And I don't think it's the thyroid, it's basically your hormone production. It's vitamin D and digestion. It's basically what's really going on. So Christina, yeah, see, so you do fine with cod liver oil and you have reactions to dairy. And what I'm going to say is that as you do more cod liver oil, especially like once I start talking more about hormone production, like I don't have people introduce dairy products until like later on in the program, and you can't just go straight to it. Okay, this is where restructuring your gut flora comes into play. This is where optimizing your microbiome comes into play. This is where I had to go seek out, different probiotics like L-Casei, like Lactobacillus casei, which is, what breaks down casein. That's a protein in milk. That's what a lot of people have the allergic reaction to. So if you're lacking that probiotic, which is more than likely what, what's causing the dairy reactions, then you have to make sure that your gut has that bacteria, that probiotic, prior to you, introducing dairy products. And one thing that's super important, by the way, especially because I know there's people in here that, may be watching and who may be vegan. One thing that's important to understand about the way that I look at, your microbiome and food is that, dairy products isn't something that I consume on a daily basis. To me, it's a tool. It's something that I use. Like if I ever need a boost in hormone production, like that's what I do. And some people, when they have allergic reactions or sensitivities to foods, their solution for the most part is to cut it out of their diet. Whereas to me, my solution is not so much to cut it out of the diet, but figure out why are you allergic and fix that issue in your microbiome. And that doesn't mean that you're going to all of a sudden start consuming that, that food, but removing that food isn't going to fix the issue, if that makes sense. So, so my invitation to you is to look into what's going on in your gut, even if you don't plan on consuming, milk or dairy products, which, again, once we get to hormone production, that will be a separate topic. But focus not so much on cutting out the food, but on fixing the actual issue in your gut. So there's that. Let's see. I do fine with fermented cod liver oil. The one that's not fermented that I have tried gave me stomach ache. Yeah, and that basically goes back to what I talked about. Fermented basically means that it's already been digested, and that's actually, I love that you posted that, Christina, because that really gives me an idea of what's going on in your gut and your microbiome. Because at the end of the day, like what I'm trying to teach with water, with minerals and vitamin D is what that is supposed to be doing is supposed to be helping you digest food better. Like that's the first step in my program is you got to improve your digestion. Okay. Once you start to get that going, then we can start to play around with everything else. Now we can start detoxing. Now we can start to, optimize your microbiome and do all of these other things. So Lisa. Okay, wonderful. Give it a try. You're welcome. Awesome. Glad that is making sense. Okay, let me have a few more minutes. So if you guys want to ask me anything, if not, there's a couple things that I wanted to talk about, and let me share my screen for this one. So I posted this this blog post last week, and I think it's I think there's a lot of good information in here. And there's this section on how to strengthen your immune system. So the link to this blog post is in the description of this live video. But I want to focus on this, strengthen these, this part on strengthening your immune system, right? And this is basically what I just covered. A weak immune system, it starts out with poor digestion, right? So everything that we just talked about, like, if you're not able to digest dairy, that's poor digestion. Like at the end of the day, whether you plan on consuming dairy or not, that basically just tells you that you have poor digestion. And if you have poor digestion, you have a weak immune system. And how do you fix that, right? You gotta raise your vitamin D levels. You gotta hydrate. You gotta mineralize. Your eating habits are gonna play a role in that. Just taking vitamin D isn't going to help you, because if you're eating bad fats, bad oils, polyunsaturated fats, vegetable oils, which are in pretty much every packaged food, most conventional stores, like that's what you find in those foods. If you're eating chips, look at the label on your chips, right? They're usually going to be made with canola oil, safflower oil, corn oil, soybean oil. All of these are bad fats that if you're trying to take fermented cod liver oil and you're eating those foods, that's actually blocking the vitamin D, right? So it's not just taking the supplement, but it's eating the proper foods that are going to actually help you uptake the nutrients from, the foods that you're eating. And I consider cod liver oil and butter oil, not vitamin D, but it's a food, right? It's a food that just happens to have a ton of vitamin D and a ton of vitamin A, plus the probiotics that your body needs to make it in your body. That way, when you do eat regular cod liver oil, Christina, then your body won't have that reaction, and your body can actually make its own vitamin D, right? So taking cod liver oil for you, fermented cod liver oil, is part of restructuring your gut flora. Okay, so now you just got to give it time, and we got to obviously change the other parts. The environment. That's basically what we have to look at. So here I talk about, one of the first mistakes people make that weakens their immune system is dehydration. Okay, so, if you're participating in this challenge, so I want you guys to watch the videos and everything, but most importantly, hydrate. Okay, you should be posting in the group showing us, hey, you're drinking water, and, posting isn't, posting in the group, it's basically a way to hold you accountable. Okay, even if you just post a picture of like the glass that you're drinking, like that's acceptable. Okay, the biggest thing with this is accountability. Okay, if you're not posting in the group, only you're going to know if you're doing it. But if you actually start to engage, okay, use this 14-day challenge as a way to get you off the ground. It takes about 21 days to create a habit. Okay, once you do this for 21 days, you just start drinking water. You feel the difference when your body's hydrated. You just feel better. And, after doing it for a while, like if I wake up and I don't drink water first thing in the morning, I feel my body dehydrated. Like my mouth, I feel like, it's just dry, and, like I have to like drink water first thing in the morning. That's not how I started. I used to struggle to drink just a regular glass of water, and now I can chug an entire quart. Like this is 1 liter of water, and I just chug it down first thing in the morning. That took a while to get used to, but now it's one of the most important things that I do in my day. I talk about health being a skill. These are the habits that I practice every day. So water, why is it important? It's basically what helps you produce stomach acid, meaning the less water you drink, the less stomach acid your body makes. That affects the pH of your stomach. That affects digestion. Okay. Water is used to push food through the intestines. So the more dehydrated you are, the more constipated you become. And constipation is one way to produce more toxic waste in your body. Toxicity affects the pH of your body. Okay, the more toxic your body is, the more body fat your body needs to produce to protect itself from all of those toxins. So you can start to see like water is like the most important thing. Water is needed to get tryptophan to the brain. Okay, tryptophan, this is your feel-good hormones, serotonin, dopamine, or the sleeping hormone melatonin. You need water for it. Okay, without it, if you don't produce serotonin, that's the feel-good hormone. This is why pretty much most people that have these issues, gas, bloating, constipation, not only do you have like brain fog and you're tired, but you feel depressed and anxiety, which appears to be for no reason. Like I know there were times where I'm like, man, I feel depressed, but like there's nothing I should really be depressed about, right? But this is basically what's going on. I was just dehydrated. I mean, I was teaching how to brew beer. I was drinking a lot of beer. Beer dehydrates you, right? So I learned my lesson there. So in other words, like water is important for digestion, and sleep. Sleep is important for your body's recovery. Okay, when you sleep, your body needs to be able to get to that REM cycle. When you're dreaming, you're actually having like a vivid, lucid dream. I know that most people that are going through this, they haven't had, like a good dream in a while. And this was one of the first things that I noticed, that when I started to add all of this into my diet, I slept good. And when I say I slept good, I mean like I had a good dream where like I just felt like I was even like awake in that dream. It was so vivid. Like I felt like I was, in it. And, and then you come out of that, and that's where you feel like your body's actually restored. Like that's when you wake up and you actually feel good. Okay. Like I remember like I would wake up and I would just feel miserable. Right. And this is the key. Like it's right here. It starts with water, and it's hard for me to get people to start this habit, but I'm telling you, like once you start, everything else is easier. Your immune system cleans house and strengthens itself during sleep. Okay, so how do you boost your immune system? You got to get good sleep. How do you get good sleep? Vitamin D, minerals, good digestion. Okay, it's all going to go back to that. So I think that's pretty much all that I'm going to cover today, but you can read the rest of this blog post. The link is in the description here of this live video. And I'm just going to take some last couple of questions if there is any. And if not, then I'm going to call it a day. Let's see here. Hey, Marie, good to see you here. I haven't talked to you in a while. Hope you're doing well. Christina, other than foods, what about breakouts on the skin from coming in contact with plastics like in a pool? This is totally off the subject. Well, not necessarily, because like breaking out is it's basically your body is trying to, well, there's a couple of things. One is the inability to digest fats. Okay, that's where a lot of like, that's how pimples are produced and all that kind of stuff, is your body not breaking down fats properly. It's also toxic waste, right? So like the body fat that your body produces, that's not good fat. Can it come from plastics? Yes, kind of. But more than anything, it's going to come from a clogged liver. And so as you start going through the program, you're going to notice, like, number one, you're switching to healthier fats. Okay, healthier fats are easier to digest, right? You're boosting your vitamin D, you're hydrating, you're mineralizing, so your digestion there is going to improve. And then detoxing, right? You're detoxing your liver, so now your liver's ability to break down fats is going to improve. And what happens with like pimples and stuff like that is that once your liver is, gets clogged, that's when think of it like a toilet, right? It gets clogged, it starts to overflow, right? That's what's happening in your body. Fats that are trying to like go through the liver, your liver gets clogged, it starts to overflow. So now it sends out all of this unwanted fat to the lymph system, and the lymph system is your skin. And that's where, when you get pimples and stuff coming out, that's the lymph system trying to push out these bad fats through the skin, right? And so that shouldn't happen. And the only reason why it happens is because, your liver may be too toxic. So as you start to go through this process of detoxing your liver, then, that's going to help. As you start switching your diet to get healthier fats, that's also going to change and improve. And then as your immune system begins to improve, as you digest food better, then that's how you clear up, skin. Hydration is, that helps clean out your liver. It helps clean out your lymph system. So you can start to see how all of these things work in synergy as you start to apply them and as you start to give it time. So hopefully that helps you out. And as far as like plastics, I mean, plastics end up in the body, and they're just toxic. And again, the body produces body fat to protect you from toxicity. So that's where that comes in. Hives, well, same thing. I mean, hives, it depends. Like I broke out in hives. Like 2/3 of my body were broke out in hives, and a lot of that was from elevated liver enzymes, which again, it goes back to a toxic liver. So, and that's what I had to overcome. Liver toxicity, and liver toxicity is not just the toxic waste in it, but it's also, there's like an entire microbiome in there, and that's what we're trying to fix. All right, let me answer just a couple more because I gotta get going. But Lisa, what type of water do you recommend? So I personally have a water distilling machine. That's by far my top source, I would say. Second to that will be reverse osmosis, and then well, I guess second to distilled water would be spring water, if you're able to get it from a good clean source. Not bottled spring water, but I'm talking about really good spring water. Like, I live in Arizona and Phoenix, and so Sedona, for example, they have a really good spring. It's clean water, it has good minerals, good amount of like silicon, stuff like that. That would be like a better choice for me. And then reverse osmosis, and then pretty much everything else. I mean, if you're doing bottled water, I mean, I guess oftentimes it can be better than city tap water. It depends on where you live. Arizona doesn't have the greatest. It's not bad, but it's not the greatest. I know when I lived in Washington State, their tap water's much better, but not everywhere in Washington State. So you just have to look at your actual source. And okay, I think that's pretty much it. All right, guys, I have to get going. I'm late for another call, but thank you guys for being here. Hope you guys got a ton of value, and I look forward to seeing you guys on the next training. Post your pictures, show me that you're hydrating. Again, the more that you guys engage, I'm going to be giving away a bottle of ionic magnesium. So if you want to be entered to win, just show me that you're drinking water, and I will be picking someone on Friday. All right, guys, have a great day, and I will talk to you guys later. See you.